Hello everyone. Welcome to BYK Book Summary. I am Amin. Here we decode the inspiring journey, mental warfare, and empire building life lesson of the world's greatest legend. Today topics and their biggest secret are right on your screen. Let's dive in with my AI co-host.
Back in 1978, when the astrophysicist and author Michael Hart put together his ranking of the 100 most influential people in all of human history, his number one choice really caught a lot of people off guard.
Oh, absolutely. It was huge.
Right. Because the person he put at the very top, he didn't inherit some massive empire. He didn't have a royal bloodline.
No standing army either.
Exactly, no standing army. He started out as a completely impoverished orphan. And yet today, the movement he set in motion encompasses, what, roughly 1.8 billion people?
Yeah, that sounds about right. It's a staggering number.
It really is. And, I mean, regardless of your personal background or beliefs, just looking at that specific trajectory, going from a fundamentally powerless individual to the absolute top of Hart's historical ranking, it demands some serious intellectual curiosity from you, the listener.
It really does.
Because we are looking at a historical anomaly that, well, it completely defies all conventional logic of how a human being actually acquires and sustains influence.
Right, because it forces us to completely rethink the entire architecture of power. I mean, we usually expect historical power structures to be highly visible, you know?
Oh, sure, like we look for the vast resources.
Exactly. The resources, the systemic advantages, the ruthless political machinery.
Right.
But when you step into the world of 6th century Arabia, all those standard blueprints for empire building, they are practically useless. So the ascent we are analyzing today requires a completely different analytical framework.
Which is exactly why we are pulling from a very specific, highly revered text for today's deep dive. We're looking at Martin Lings' 1983 biography, Muhammad, his life based on the earliest sources.
And it's such an incredible book.
It really is. And we are doing this because Lings didn't just write some dry, textbook recitation of dates and of movements.
Yeah, nobody wants to read that.
Right. He actually went back to the foundational 8th and 9th century text scholars like Ibn Ishaq and Ibn Hisham, and he synthesized them into an English biography that is internationally recognized for its meticulous accuracy.
And its style, too. I mean, it has this incredibly evocative, poetic, literary style. Lings really gives us the psychological texture of the era, which is so rare.
Yeah, that psychological texture is going to be vital for our mission today, because we are taking the narrative provided by Lings and we're analyzing this life specifically through the lens of character-based leadership.
Right.
We want to look at the actual mechanics of influence, like how do you build trust in a totally cutthroat mercantile society?
Yeah, or how do you maintain your coalition's cohesion after a completely devastating military defeat?
Exactly. So we are going to be tracking a distinct evolution here, from an orphan to a merchant, then to a persecuted visionary, a pragmatic statesman, and ultimately to a conqueror who wields amnesty rather than the sword.
It's a massive journey.
It is. But before we get into the mechanics of that evolution, we really need to establish some ground rules for this discussion.
Definitely. This is important.
Because this source material touches on history that is profoundly significant, politically, culturally, religiously, to billions of people.
Yeah.
So we are maintaining strict analytical impartiality here.
Right. We are not taking sides.
Exactly. We are not here to endorse, validate, or invalidate any theological claims or religious doctrines. Our sole focus for you today is to objectively dissect the historical narrative, the leadership principles, and the sociological impacts, exactly as they are presented in Martin Lings' text.
Yeah, we are treating this as really the ultimate historical case study in human behavior, resilience, and crisis management.
Okay, let's unpack this. We have to set the initial environment.
Yeah.
So we are in Mecca in the year 570 CE.
Right.
And the narrative begins with what is basically a compounding series of systemic losses. His father, Abdullah, dies before he is even born.
Yeah.
His mother, Amina, passes away when he's just 6 years old.
Which is just heartbreaking.
Completely. And then the grandfather who takes him in, Abdul Muttalib, he dies when the boy is 8.
It's just relentless trauma.
So he is eventually raised by his uncle, Abu Talib. But by the age of 8, this child has been stripped of literally every traditional layer of protection a society offers.
And to really understand the weight of that, we have to look at how social currency functioned in tribal Arabia at the time.
Yeah, set the scene for us.
Well, there was no state apparatus, there's no social welfare, no institutional justice system, no police force.
Wow.
Right? Your physical safety and your economic viability were entirely dictated by your immediate patriarchal lineage. The tribe protected its own, but within that tribal hierarchy, an orphan with no inherited wealth was just inherently vulnerable.
You're at the absolute mercy of the collective.
Exactly. The margins for survival, let alone any kind of success, were practically non-existent.
So, I mean, the assumption would be that a person in that specific position either becomes a permanent subservient dependent, or they resort to really ruthless, zero-sum tactics to just claw their way into some position of security.
Yeah, that would be the expected path.
Right. Yet by the time he is 25, he has learned the merchant trade and earned the title Al-Amin the Trustworthy.
Which is a huge deal.
It is. The people of Mecca, who are these highly pragmatic, very seasoned desert traders,
Yeah.
they are willingly handing him their capital to manage.
Yeah.
He then marries Khadija, who is this highly successful businesswoman, and she specifically seeks him out to manage her caravans.
It just fundamentally challenges the idea that you have to be ruthless to experience upward mobility in a harsh environment.
Well, let's actually scrutinize that.
Yeah.
Because if we look at highly competitive modern environments, say, a hyper-aggressive venture capital market or some deeply entrenched political machine,
Right.
climbing the ladder in those spaces almost always involves leveraging existing networks, utilizing financial backing, or aggressively outmaneuvering your rivals.
Yeah, for sure.
So wait, how exactly does someone with zero resources in ancient Arabia climb the social ladder so effectively without stepping on anyone?
Well, the mechanism here is what we can call character as capital.
Okay, character is capital. I like that.
Yeah, because in an economy where written contracts were, they were very difficult to enforce, and trade routes stretched for thousands of miles across hostile terrain.
Right, you couldn't just call the police if someone stole your stuff in another country.
Exactly. The entire financial system rested on personal reliability. If you handed a merchant your goods in Mecca, you had to trust they wouldn't just embezzle the profits when they got to Damascus.
Wow, yeah, high stakes.
So because Muhammad lacked the leverage of wealth or the intimidation factor of a massive family militia, his absolute integrity became his primary competitive advantage.
Oh, that's fascinating.
Yeah, the title Al-Amin wasn't some self-proclaimed marketing slogan. It was a societal consensus. His character literally built his economic foundation.
It's a fascinating paradigm. When society strips you of all external advantages, your internal architecture is literally the only asset you have left to deploy. People trusted him with their livelihoods because the consistency of his behavior provided this ironclad guarantee.
Yeah.
So he builds this comfortable, highly respected life from the ashes of severe childhood trauma.
Yeah.
But achieving that stability makes the next phase of the narrative incredibly perilous. I mean, why would someone who has finally secured the respect of their peers and financial security willingly detonate that status quo?
Right. And that brings us to the pivotal year of 610 CE.
Okay.
Muhammad is 40 years old. He is taken to isolating himself for meditation in the cave of Hira, which is just outside Mecca.
Right.
According to Lings's synthesis of the sources, it is here that he receives the first revelation through the angel Gabriel. The command is Iqra, read. And this is the genesis of the Islamic message.
So we have to really analyze the psychology of a 40-year-old man in the specific cultural context, bringing forth a message of absolute monotheism.
Yeah, because it was dangerous.
Completely. Mecca was not just casually polytheistic. The Kaaba housed, hundreds of idols?
Yeah, hundreds, representing the gods of various tribes all across the Arabian Peninsula.
Right. So for the first 3 years, he shares this new message of a single, unseen God entirely in private. And the early adopters are highly revealing.
Yes.
Khadija is the first, his young cousin Ali is the first male, and his close peer, Abu Bakr, a really respected merchant, joins shortly after.
What's fascinating here is the demographic spread.
Yeah, break that down.
You have a mature, wealthy businesswoman, you have a youth, and you have an established, influential peer.
Right.
And then when the message inevitably leaks to the marginalized classes, including enslaved people, you see a movement that cuts across literally every established social boundary in Mecca.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it proves the message had a universal resonance that wasn't just reliant on appealing to one specific demographic grievance.
But once this preaching moves into the public sphere, the Meccan elite respond with staggering violence.
Yeah, brutal violence.
The source material details the torture of followers, most notably Bilal, who was an Ethiopian slave. His enslaver dragged him into the blistering desert and had these massive boulders pressed onto his chest, demanding that he renounce the one God. And Bilal's response was simply to whisper, Ahad, Ahad, one, one.
It's such a powerful image.
It is. But, I mean, I understand ideological friction, but from a purely rational standpoint, investing that much energy into physically crushing a slave over a theological disagreement seems deeply inefficient for a merchant class. Like, why the visceral systemic violence?
Because you have to look at the underlying economic engine of Mecca.
Okay.
The Meccan elite, the Quraysh, they were not primarily religious zealots, they were monopolists.
Monopolists, how so?
Well, the Kaaba functioned essentially as the Wall Street of Arabia. Because it housed the idols of all the surrounding tribes, it guaranteed a massive year-round influx of pilgrims.
Oh, I see.
And those pilgrims brought trade, and the Quraysh controlled the taxation and the markets. So Muhammad's message of absolute monotheism directly threatened to render the Kaaba's idols obsolete.
Wow.
If the idols go, the pilgrims stop coming. If the pilgrims stop coming, the entire Meccan economy just collapses.
So it wasn't just a debate about theology at all. It was a direct assault on the fundamental business model of the city.
Precisely. And there is a secondary, deeply sociological threat here, too.
What's that?
The new message insisted on the radical equality of all human beings before God.
Oh, right.
In a society that is deeply stratified by tribal nobility and sustained by slave labor, telling a patrician that he is spiritually equal to an Ethiopian slave like Bilal is an existential threat to the social order.
Yeah, they wouldn't tolerate that.
They didn't torture Bilal simply because he prayed differently. They tortured him to publicly reassert the social hierarchy that this new movement was threatening to dismantle.
That is so dark. But it makes the resolution of Bilal's torture a total masterclass in early community leadership. Because Abu Bakr doesn't just, offer thoughts and prayers.
Yeah.
He uses his own personal merchant wealth to purchase Bilal from his tormentor, and he emancipates him.
Yes.
The leader's vision was compelling enough that followers willingly endured the rocks, but the leadership structure was simultaneously utilizing its actual resources to protect its most vulnerable members.
Yeah, it's incredible.
It is a highly cohesive, fiercely loyal organization being forged under extreme pressure.
They're transitioning here from a loose group of ideological adherents into a truly unified community, one defined by shared risk and mutual responsibility.
Right.
Muhammad is modeling a leadership style that absolutely refuses to dilute its core principles just to appease the elite, while he's also actively mitigating the damage inflicted on his followers.
But sheer endurance is not a long-term survival strategy.
No, it's really not.
A community can be incredibly resilient, but if the systemic violence continues to escalate, basic attrition will eventually wipe them out. And by 622 CE, the Quraysh realize that torturing the followers isn't stopping the movement.
Right, so they change tactics.
Exactly. They shift tactics from containment to decapitation. Yeah. They formalize a conspiracy to assassinate Muhammad in his bed.
Yeah.
And they do this by utilizing a hit squad composed of youths from every major family, specifically to diffuse the blame and prevent a single blood feud.
Which forces a definitive pivot in the entire narrative. The era of passive endurance is over.
Yeah.
The assassination plot triggers the hijra, the migration to the oasis city of Yathrib, which would come to be known as Medina.
Okay.
And this geographic shift is really the single most critical inflection point in the historical record.
Because the survival of the community suddenly hinges on this completely perilous, roughly 200-mile escape through the desert.
Yeah.
And when he finally arrives in Medina, the leadership challenge doesn't get easier. It just changes shape entirely.
Very true.
He is stepping out of the frying pan of Mecca and into an absolute geopolitical nightmare. Medina is a deeply fractured city.
Yeah, it was a mess.
You have the Aus and Khazraj tribes who have been basically bleeding each other dry in generational civil wars. You have several distinct, powerful Jewish tribes with their own alliances and economic interests.
It is an environment that is just primed for total systemic collapse.
Right.
And he arrives as a refugee, a hunted man.
Yeah, zero leverage.
Exactly. The conventional expectation is that a charismatic leader in exile either tries to usurp the local power structures by force, or he isolates his followers into some insular defensive compound.
Which happens all the time in history.
Right. But he does neither. He leverages his reputation to mediate the existing conflicts and initiates the drafting of the Constitution of Medina.
And the mechanics of this document are just profound. It is widely analyzed as a pioneering, multi-religious state charter.
Yeah.
It explicitly outlines the rights, duties, and protections of the Muslims, the Jewish tribes, and the pagan Arabs, establishing them all as a single sovereign community, an ummah, for the very specific purpose of statecraft.
And we really have to look closely at how he achieved this.
Yeah, how did he?
How do you get deeply entrenched, historically hostile factions to agree to a unified charter? Well, he didn't impose a monolithic religious law on the non-Muslims.
Interesting.
He appealed to their shared pragmatic need for security. The Constitution formalized rules for blood money to prevent future civil wars.
Right.
But more importantly, it established a mutual defense pact. It mandated that if Medina was attacked by an external force, say, the Quraysh of Mecca, every single faction, regardless of their theology, was obligated to defend the city collectively.
It's a brilliant piece of diplomatic engineering. If
Right.
we frame it in modern organizational terms, it's akin to stepping into a massive corporate merger where the various departments actively despise each other.
Yeah, great analogy.
Right. And instead of forcing everyone to adopt the exact same corporate culture overnight, you draft a binding operational agreement that respects their distinct methodologies, but inextricably links their survival to a shared bottom line.
Exactly.
If the ship sinks, everyone grounds. So everyone agrees to patch the hull.
Exactly. This demonstrates immense leadership agility. Because the skills required to foster spiritual endurance in a persecuted minority in Mecca are vastly different from the skills required to negotiate a pluralistic, legally binding state charter in Medina.
Such a good point.
He seamlessly transitions from a persecuted visionary to a pragmatic statesman and supreme magistrate.
But a constitution, no matter how brilliantly drafted it is only as effective as the state's ability to enforce and defend it.
Yeah, the ink on the page won't stop an army.
Exactly. You can align all the internal factions you want, but the Quraysh back in Mecca haven't simply written off their losses. The assassination target escaped, and now he's sitting right on the major northern trade routes out of Mecca. A military confrontation is completely unavoidable.
Which plunges Medina into a decade-long crucible of conflict.
Right.
The subsequent battles are not just military engagements. They are high-stakes stress tests of the Constitution of Medina and Muhammad's strategic adaptability.
Let's break down the mechanics of these three defining conflicts, starting with the Battle of Badr in 624 CE. The resource asymmetry here is stark. You have a nascent Muslim force of just over 300 men confronting a heavily armed Meccan army of roughly 1,000.
Right. Badr was a fight for sheer existence.
Yeah.
The Meccans marched out to definitively crush the Medina project. But the Muslim victory at Badr wasn't just a matter of zeal, it was really a matter of tactical positioning.
How so?
Muhammad secured the walls at Badr, forcing the Meccan army to fight while deprived of water in the intense desert heat.
Whoa.
He utilized the terrain to negate their numerical advantage. The victory solidified his authority in Medina and proved that the new state could actually project power.
But history rarely lets a disruptive new power secure its existence with a single victory.
No, it doesn't.
The very next year, 625 CE, the Meccans return with a larger, more disciplined force for the Battle of Uhud.
Yeah.
And this is where the narrative of unbroken divine success fractures. The Muslim forces suffer a catastrophic defeat
It was devastating.
because of a breakdown in discipline among the archers, who actually abandoned their strategic position on a hill to collect spoils. The Meccan cavalry flanks them. Muhammad himself is severely injured. He takes a blow to the face, his helmet is smashed, and rumors of his actual death sweep through the chaotic battlefield.
This is a critical analytical juncture.
Yeah.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, how a leader manages victory is one thing, but how they manage a traumatic, bloody defeat reveals the true durability of their leadership.
This is exactly what I want to dissect.
Okay.
Because if we look at standard tribal warfare, or frankly modern political movements, a disastrous defeat where the leader's tactical plan fails and the leader is physically incapacitated,
Yeah.
it usually results in total mutiny. The illusion of invincibility is shattered. The factions within Medina who were kind of on the fence could easily use this moment to just abandon the alliance.
Oh, absolutely.
So how do you hold a fractured, brand new coalition together after Uhud?
The coalition survives because the authority wasn't exclusively predicated on the promise of perpetual victory. When the chaos at Uhud erupted, he did not retreat to a fortified position in Medina to save himself.
Right.
He stayed on the battlefield, bleeding alongside his men, rallying the remnants of his forces to prevent a total rout. He absorbed the exact same physical trauma as the lowest-ranking foot soldier.
Wow.
And that shared sacrifice is incredibly potent. He absorbed the failure, managed the immediate crisis, and then systematically rebuilt the community's psychological resolve. He basically modeled the exact resilience he demanded of them.
And that psychological resolve was absolutely necessary.
Yeah, it will.
But the Meccans escalate the threat level to its maximum capacity. In 627 CE, we see the Battle of the Trench.
Right.
The Quraysh forge a massive confederacy, amassing an army of 10,000 men.
Which is huge for that time.
Unbelievable numbers.
Yeah.
They march on Medina, not to fight a pitched battle, but to lay total siege and just annihilate the city entirely.
Facing 10,000 troops in that era meant certain destruction if fought conventionally.
Yeah.
Medina was vastly outnumbered. They couldn't meet them in the open field, and their internal fortifications just wouldn't withstand a prolonged siege.
Here's where it gets really interesting.
Yeah.
This is where the flexibility of his leadership shines through in a deeply traditional culture. In an incredibly proud, fiercely tribal Arab society, where military lineage and desert warfare traditions were a matter of profound cultural pride,
Right.
Muhammad eagerly adopts a radically foreign military tactic.
Yeah, it's brilliant.
A Persian companion, Salman al-Farisi, suggests digging a massive trench across the exposed northern approach to the city. This was a technique used in Persia, but it was virtually unknown in Arabia.
And the adoption of that tactic is a stunning example of egoless leadership.
How so?
Well, a more insecure leader, someone overly concerned with projecting traditional Arab martial strength, might have dismissed a foreign idea as cowardly or culturally inappropriate.
Right, like we don't hide in holes.
Exactly. But he recognized that the objective wasn't to look heroic. The objective was survival.
Yeah.
He authorized the trench and physically participated in digging it alongside his men.
The psychological warfare element of the trench is just brilliant. The Meccan cavalry, which is the absolute pride of their army, arrives expecting a traditional confrontation, and they just stare at this massive ditch.
Yeah, they had no idea what to do.
Their entire tactical advantage is completely neutralized. They camp out, their supplies dwindle, a massive storm hits, and eventually the Confederacy just fractures and retreats. Medina is saved without a major, bloody infantry clash.
It was a strategic masterstroke that fundamentally broke the offensive capability of Mecca.
Wow.
After the trench, the Quraysh realized they could not destroy Medina militarily. The balance of power had permanently shifted.
Which sets the stage for the climactic resolution of the narrative. By 630 CE, 21 years after those initial revelations in the Cave of Hira,
Yeah.
after 2 decades of systemic torture, exile, assassination attempts, and brutal warfare, the paradigm completely flips.
It's quite the turnaround.
It is. The army that marches out of Medina toward Mecca is no longer 300 men. It is 10,000 strong.
Yeah.
The persecuted orphan is returning to his homeland with overwhelming, undeniable military supremacy.
And if we look at the historical precedents of the ancient world, the script for this moment is already written.
What do you mean?
Well, when a conquering force enters an enemy city that has actively waged a 20-year war of extermination against them, the outcome is mathematically guaranteed.
Right.
You execute the opposing leadership, you seize their property, you enslave the hostile factions to ensure they can never rise against you again. That was the established, universally accepted rule of engagement.
And let's be honest, from a purely cold, strategic perspective, leaving the deeply entrenched Meccan elite alive.
Yeah.
I mean, the very people who tortured Bilal, who plotted the assassination, who funded the armies at Badr and Uhud, leaving them alive and free in your newly conquered city seems like a massive security risk.
Oh, absolutely.
You are essentially leaving the architects of your persecution completely intact.
A conventional military tactician would absolutely advise purging the Meccan leadership.
Right.
But this is where character-based leadership diverges from standard realpolitik. Muhammad understood the deeply entrenched mechanics of the Arabian blood feud.
Oh, okay.
If he executed the Meccan leadership, he would simply reset the clock on the cycle of violence. Their sons and brothers would be culturally obligated to seek revenge.
Wow, yeah.
Violence might secure the physical geography of the city, but it cannot secure a lasting, stable peace.
So instead of a purge, the biography details a bloodless conquest. He issues a general amnesty, Almost the entire population of Mecca, including his fiercest, most dedicated historical enemies, is completely forgiven.
Yeah, it's why
No executions for past war crimes, no mass seizures of private property.
we really have to pause and analyze the psychological shockwave of that decision.
Yeah, please.
He held the lives of his lifelong tormentors right in the palm of his hand. He had the military power, the historical justification, and the political capital to exact total retribution.
Everyone expected it.
Exactly. By choosing absolute forgiveness at the exact moment of his greatest vulnerability, because victory often makes leaders arrogant and cruel, he broke the psychological framework of his enemies.
This is exactly why Martin Ling's poetic and deeply researched prose is so vital to understanding this history.
Oh, completely.
A purely academic summary simply states, amnesty was granted, casualties were low. But Ling's allows us to inhabit the emotional reality of the Meccans.
Yeah.
Imagine standing in the courtyard of the Kaaba. You are part of the elite who drove this man out of his home. You see 10,000 soldiers occupying your city.
You're terrified.
You are waiting for the inevitable order of execution, and instead the man you hunted looks at you and essentially says, "Go your way, for you are free."
Yeah.
The emotional whiplash of that moment is just profound.
Yeah.
Ling's captures the sheer, overwhelming weight of a leader extending grace when vengeance was the absolute guaranteed expectation.
It was a tactical victory achieved through psychological and emotional mastery. By sparing their lives, he didn't just conquer a city, he permanently neutralized the ideological opposition.
Right.
He transformed his fiercest enemies into profoundly loyal subjects, because the loyalty born of unexpected mercy is vastly stronger than the compliance extracted through fear.
So what does this all mean? When we pull back and synthesize this entire narrative, the through line is undeniable.
Yeah.
We have tracked a life that completely subverts standard historical models.
Yeah, we have.
We watched a vulnerable, marginalized orphan build an ironclad reputation to become a highly sought-after merchant.
Right.
We saw him evolve into a persecuted visionary whose integrity inspired followers to endure the unendurable. We tracked his reinvention as a groundbreaking statesman who engineered a pluralistic constitution in Medina.
Amazing.
We dissected his adaptability as a resilient military commander who utilized shared sacrifice and foreign tactics to survive annihilation. And finally, we witnessed his return as a magnanimous conqueror who deployed radical forgiveness to permanently break a generational cycle of violence.
And in every single one of those phases, character was the foundational currency.
Yeah.
His trustworthiness validated his merchant contracts. His integrity lent credibility to his prophetic message.
Right.
His willingness to bleed alongside his men maintained his military coalitions. And his profound psychological restraint dictated the amnesty of Mecca.
It's all connected.
It is. This is precisely why Martin Ling's biography is so globally esteemed. It perfectly encapsulates how patience, resilience, and unyielding purpose operate at their peak expression.
And the mechanics of this history apply directly to the friction of our daily lives.
Absolutely.
Obviously, the scale is vastly different, but for you listening, whether you are trying to stabilize a volatile corporate team, whether you are trying to build trust in a divided local community, or whether you're just navigating your own personal setbacks, the core principle remains entirely applicable.
Yeah, character is scalable.
Right. External capital wealth, titles, immediate leverage can evaporate overnight. Markets crash and alliances shift. But the trust you cultivate through the consistency of your character is the only asset that actually survives a crisis.
It really is.
It is the only foundation that allows you to rebuild when everything else is stripped away.
Character is the ultimate stabilizing force in an inherently unpredictable environment.
As we conclude this deep dive, let's return to the statistic we started with. We talked about Michael Hart ranking this impoverished, marginalized orphan as the most influential person in human history.
Yeah.
We spent this time analyzing the mechanics of how that influence was built, layer by layer, crisis by crisis. But the true measure of a leader isn't just in how they acquire power.
No, it's not.
It's in what they do the exact moment they finally achieve it.
And that journey leaves us with a lingering, deeply personal question to consider.
What's that?
Well, history is full of inspiring figures who fought bravely against oppression while they were the underdog.
Yeah.
But the absolute ultimate test of a human being's internal architecture does not happen when they are fighting for survival in the trenches.
Right.
The true test happens the moment the underdog finally holds all the cards.
The moment of ultimate leverage.
Exactly. So I leave you to mull over this. If you were suddenly handed unquestionable, absolute authority over the very people who had spent 20 years actively trying to destroy you,
Wow.
what would your first order be?
That is a profound question to take with you. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into an extraordinary life and the enduring mechanics of leadership. Keep questioning, keep analyzing, and we will see you next time.
So, friends, that was the complete breakdown. Make sure to take a screenshot of this growth gift, this infographic, so this lesson stay with you. If you want to learn from legends every single day, join our community. I am Amin. Always remember, read more, think deeper. Let me know in the comments who we should cover next. See you in next episode.